Hello back everyone. Here's another restoration project. This is a kit I got from my brother back in the 90s that was partially completed. Over time it got damaged, so I decided to disassemble it as much as I could and give it new life. So after a quick wash, and as the model will be lighted, I first shaved off the molded windows and drilled them out instead. I also had to temporarily assemble the model to find the center of gravity in order to install the rod for the base in the right place. To affix the model on the rod, I used an audio jack like on my TOS Enterprise in my previous video. In order to mount the female end of the connector in the model, I had to fill the opening for the original stand. I used some thick styrene and used plastic cement to close the openings from the inside and 2-part epoxy putty to fill the opening on the outside. After smoothing it out, I re-drilled a new hole for the connector. To attach the female part of the connector, I screwed it on and used 2 parts JB Weld epoxy to fit it in place. And I soldered 2 wires to the male connector, which will be fixed inside the brass rod. It was a little tricky reinstalling the aft subassembly, since that part was literally torn off the upper hull. So I decided to shave off whatever material was protruding and add a piece of styrene sheet to the underside of the subassembly that will also provide a strong bonding point. After all the pieces were somewhat repaired and ready to be reassembled, it was time for light blocking the inside. I masked off all the areas that will be bonded together with a combination of liquid mask and masking tape, and I painted the insides black to light block the translucent plastic, and then white to help reflect the light inside. Now it was time to work on the lighting. I mostly used LED strips where you can cut them at every third SMD. I thinned the contact points on every strip before soldering wires. Most contact points needed some persuasion, so I used a soldering paste. For the small quantity of blinking lights, I built a simple little circuit with a 4060 chip. This little circuit can create different blinking effects. fits like a charm. I used small SMDs for the blinking lights and fixed them in place with UV resin. To build the base, I chose a small box for electrical projects and installed the original base on top. I also had to remove the original stand and replace it with a brass rod. One trick in detaching two glued parts together is to use some cement and pour it into the joint. The cement will reactivate the old glue and both parts can be separated. So, after removing the old stand, I filled the cutout with a styrene sheet and putty, then drilled a new hole for the brass rod. To hold the rod in place, I hot glued a lid of a Tamiya paint bottle with a small hole to pass the wires through. I also made openings for the power connector and power switch. Here's the base painted with a black base color. I painted the Klingon logo with the typical colors commonly seen in the series, with a lot of masking. It was finally time to close up the model, fill in some seams, mask clear parts, and paint. I worked with sub-assemblies since it's easier to handle them instead of the whole model. After the sub-assemblies were all cleaned and primed, I passed all the wires from the different light sources and connected them inside the main hull. After testing if everything lights up, I glued everything together. Some of the gaps were filled with a goo made out from chunks of styrene and extra thin cement. And then the entire model was primed once again. First with a thick grey filler primer, then with black to have a base for shadows, and then back with light grey, leaving some areas darker to simulate shadows and first variations of color. And finally, the real colors were applied. I had trouble deciding what colors to use. I used reference pictures of the actual filming model and some screen caps. Depending what picture I was looking at, some pics depicted the model in a more green color, others depicted it in a more blue color. I finally chose a combination of some soft greens and blues, with darker blues that I mixed with the base green color to create darker tones, shadows, and for some weathering. After that, I applied a first satin clear coat to seal the paint in, and started masking the raised panels to paint them red and other little details in different colors. Before applying the decals, I sealed the surface once again with a satin clear coat. I didn't have another set of the original decals for this particular model, so I found a generic set of Klingon markings designed by Rick Sternbach on the CultTVman site. I'll put the link in the description. After the decals were applied, I filled all the windows with canopy glue and created a few domes with thick UV resin. And a final satin clear coat was applied. As a final step, I connected the wires from the rod that I used as a handle when painting the model with the switch and power connector. Closed the base up, put the model on the base, and I called it done. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.